let's talk about the future of the internet. Now, there's a case being heard right now in DC about Section 230, which basically treats internet publishers as sort of neutral platforms on which all the crazy people online can say whatever they want, and the publishers themselves, because they're not indicated as publishers as outlined by this 26-word section of the current law, they're not held liable for the stuff that is published on their platforms. So this is being contested in a case right now relating to an unfortunate incident a few years ago, and this could have major ramifications for how the internet is constructed going forward and how big tech giants like Google are viewed in the eyes of federal law. Now, why are we talking about this on The Hash? Because obviously there's implications for Web3 here. The idea of neutral platforms is a big one in crypto, and this certainly deserves a bit of conversation. I'm going to throw this to Will. There might be a history corner in here, but Will, what is your thought on this big tech case up in the Supreme Court?
Yeah, I wish we actually had Jen on the show. Just like talk about the lawyer angle here, because that's actually what we really need. You don't need a history corner for me, Zach. You need the legal angle here, which we don't have today. That being said, there is a little bit of history stuff that we can talk about, and that is just like how we think about the ability to speak in the United States, which is really like where this case is being decided, right? In the Supreme Court, how do we talk about each other? How do we talk online? How do we communicate information to each other? And we always think about the First Amendment. I can say whatever I want. That's not really the case, right? There's tons of different precedents within court cases and tons of different precedent within the ability to speak freely within like a private enterprise, being able to speak freely in public, being able to speak freely in government. There's lots of different ways where you can be censored and you can't say whatever you want. When it comes to the internet, that only becomes a little bit more tricky, right? Because I have the ability to amplify anything I want to say to so many different people. And some of those things are horrible things. Just like we saw in the Supreme Court case, there was an incident where YouTube was allowing some video work from terrorist organizations to be populated, and people were boosting that information. And in this case, they're saying that that led to more acts of radical terrorism, which obviously no one is a proponent of. But if these are going to be platforms for communication, can't necessarily hold someone liable for being a third party here. You can only hold the person responsible who is issuing that content. The Supreme Court case here is deciding if that is the case or not. As for Web3, I think you're totally right, Zach. Like, we have to question, can Web3 hold this content, and do we want it to hold this content? There's tons of different initiatives out there to be able to build neutral networks for holding content. But then you just get back to the same problem, right? Like, are you going to be okay at the consequences of having a neutral network? So I think this is really a story that crypto participants should be watching this week, something to pay attention to. Wendy, up to you.
Well, I thought you were going to talk about Web 5, because Web 3 is like so outdated.
Web 5.
Yeah, Web 5, man. No, but
the
I do think
the
the story,
dead, isn't it?
Who even, like, honestly, we're in like this bear market thingy right now, and everybody's just whatever. But the story goes back to operating in a true decentralized economy. Can humans actually operate in this economy? Because there's always going to be something we might not necessarily like, something that we don't want to see, something that we can argue that certain people from specific groups should not have a platform. But at the same time, if you're operating in a true decentralized economy, I don't get to tell you and you don't get to tell me. So I feel like we're going to see a lot of back and forth on this topic. And I don't ever think that they're going to come to an exact resolution, maybe in the next like decade or so. But I just don't think we're going to see one anytime soon, because especially if we're operating in America and we take a look at the Constitution, what exactly is entitled as free speech? Like, what can you say and what can't you say without, consequences or causing harm on other people? So it's going to be a hot topic. We're going to have to keep discussing it. And again, I don't think that humans can fully operate in a true decentralized economy. Anna, did you have any thoughts on this?
Well, I think it's interesting that when you, for example, watch the whole discussion about Twitter and censorship, non-censorship, free speech on Twitter, which is again crypto's favorite platform, you can see that pretty much the same group of people. On one hand, we hate to be censored. On the other hand, we hate to see things, people saying things we don't like. So, like many people would kind of prefer a benevolent censor who would, just censor the way that doesn't hurt themselves. But I think if a big policy decision on the level of DC would be made to, that the platforms are liable for what for what people say online, that would lead to such an aggressive censorship on these online platforms, because neither Twitter nor YouTube want to be held accountable for whatever the hell you're saying about crypto, about other people, about the whole nations, and so on. And so I would expect the online censorship on this platform become just the next level. Like, everybody would be surprised to see how much they need to hedge not to be just censored the hell out of the platform for saying something that would trigger some safety mechanism.